All right, all right, all right, all right. So I wasn't planning on it, and I don't have my special camera right now, and I'm going to be getting ready for Bible class in just a few moments, but I heard some things and earlier today, and I pondered it, I listened to it, I played it over and over in my mind, and I'm not the one to knee jerk to perceived injustices, or I like to let the facts kind of settle first. As all of you know, we are in the midst of ugly yet beautiful change in America. I listened to former President Barack Obama earlier today, and he presented a very balanced, equal, level-headed, sensible vision and dream for what we can be as a community, what we shall be as a community if we continue this work, and also how far we've come. So, without taking up too much more time, I'd like to respond after hearing that wonderful speech as he laid out a great vision for how we can mend mistrust in our community between establishment, between systems, and it doesn't matter what system that is, whether it's the educational system, whether it's criminal justice, but a roadmap, as it were, to reduce police violence. And one thing that he said that was powerful, that stuck out to me, is that we have to acknowledge we have come quite a long way in this country. And he stated that the civil rights and the protest of the 60s and 70s was different than the protests that we've seen over the last week. And his point was that he stated, this is his words, that he's never seen such a solidarity around people embracing the idea that we need to lean in to justice, equal justice in this country. One of the enemies of equal justice is the way we perceive one another, the way we look at one another. If you perceive me as a monster, and God does not work with your heart to understand out of one blood he made all people, you will continue to see me as a threat and not a benefit to you and your family. So the title of this post is, "We Are Not Ghetto." Sometimes language like that is used to describe African Americans, which is very curious because it's a word that finds its origins in Europe in description of Jews who were ostracized, who were cut off from society, who were persecuted, and were made to live in cramped spaces in the city. So I find that interesting, that somebody outside of the African American community would describe us as ghetto when the term doesn't find its origin with our community. That's the first thing. The second thing is that to describe African Americans as ghetto really begs the question, if you really believe that, How then did whatever you're watching that you're deeming ghetto, how did it get that way? Was it the desire of the people? Was it the choice of the people? Or rather, was it something bigger and more systematic outside of that group's control that put them in a position to behave in the way that you deem is ghetto? When you suggest that our young are ghetto, you are stripping from them any opportunity for success, for a great life, and to fulfill their God-given potential. So I want to speak to everyone that will listen to my voice, in particular African Americans and brown people, and the people who will listen who are from ostracized places. We are not ghetto. You know, I did a little research in my studies as a social studies teacher, and I found that African Americans have been building cities and wealth in this nation, not just during slavery, but immediately after and beyond. You think of Eatonville down in Florida, where Black people raised up, all of the municipalities run by African Americans, a thriving place. You think of Tulsa, Oklahoma, where Black Wall Street took place, where the wealth was admired by the white communities on the outside of it. To ever ascribe to African Americans the term ghetto is to deny the greatness and excellence and also the bloodshed of our ancestors that was poured into the foundation of this very nation that we call great. And guess what? America is great, but America is still a baby. America is still growing. It's still one of the wonders of the world, an experiment, as it were. Only in America could you see the progress toward equal rights in such a swift fashion, especially by minority groups. Minority, we use the term minority, young people, I'm educating you. We literally mean minority in terms of percent. In what other nation could African Americans rise to the level of not just Hiram Neville's congressmen, not just senators, not just activists, not just doctors, not just lawyers, but President of the United States? Only here. So I say that to bring this poignant point to you now. People, we have to learn to love one another. But as it pertains to Black lives, there needs to be an adjustment. And I'm calling for Hollywood to change its images of African Americans. I'm calling for teachers to get into cultural competency and professional learning, to sit down and eat with people of a different ethnicity and background so that we learn to listen to one another. You know, it was interesting that before the pandemic hit, a kid would try to come through the gate at the schools that I've been blessed to serve with a full mask on, and I would say, no, we don't allow those masks. However, now after the pandemic, we're all wearing masks. Isn't it interesting how different policy can shift simply by what's happening in the world? And if you haven't caught it yet, there's a shift happening around the world. And that is, people are learning that we're not so different, that we're actually closer to the same, and we don't want to admit it. There's pictures and images of the South. Every time I look at my people from the South, Meridian, Mississippi, every time there's images of the South, there's this thing in Hollywood trying to make white people be against black people, and all of those images are taking place in power struggles. But I want to let you know we're more the same. I come from a legacy of African American people on my mother's side who took care of the children of Caucasian people. If we were so evil, how is it that we raised up beautiful children that did not look like us, but we understood that our blood was the same? Is it too much to ask for you to have enough love that before you call my people ghetto, that you do a little history lesson? And before you look at our young people who I have said, we don't want to loot, we don't want to riot, that's not who we are as a people. But when the tension is built up the way it has been, pressure busts a pipe. We have called for peace around this nation, and we will continue to work strategically in the areas and fields that God has sent us to serve for the betterment of all people. However, I beg of you, please rethink how you describe African Americans. We are not ghetto. We are not the N-word. We are vibrant humans who have been through great tragedy in this nation. And through that tragedy, we took it, stirred it up, and that's why we talk loud now. We took it and stirred it up and sing melodiously. We laugh loud. We dance vigorously. Whether it's entertainment, whether it's sports, and whether it's all of the other professions that we are in, we provide high quality innovation, intellect, and excellence in this nation and should be respected for it. We should not just be claps at when we run a football, because you would call that young man ghetto when you see him on the street with a hood on. Yet when he puts on a basketball uniform and hits a three-pointer, you spend $1,000 to watch him shoot that. We are more than entertainment to you. We are more than a people hibernating in a ghetto somewhere, waiting to do some violence. That's not who we are. That's not who we are. But rather, we're human and we matter. And so I would ask that all of my other fellow humans, as we watch those who have the courage to follow in this great American tradition of protest. This nation was founded on a protest. Every great movement in this country has taken place by a protest. One of the biggest protests was called the Civil War. Women's suffrage, we had to protest. Voter rights, we had to protest. It doesn't make us evil, an evil country. It means we're a growing country. So yes, we continue to say to largely our young, and not just African American, but white American, Mexican, Latin American, Indian American, Muslim American, all of you out there who are upset, let's not burn down what was built. In your anger, let some of us who are seasoned show you a better way. But on the flip side, I must come in defense to our young people. And I cannot allow you to label them as ghetto, to label them as animals, to label them as anything but hurt. We will overcome. And I'd like to close, and I'm hoping this does not offend anybody, but I'd like to close with a little poem by Maya Angelou. It says, "You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust, I'll rise." Does my sassiness upset you? Why you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns with the certainty of tides, just like hope springing high, still I rise. Did you want to see me broken? Bowed head, lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weaking by my soulful cries. Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard. 'Cause I laugh like I've got gold mines digging in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness, but still like air, I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. And we are not ghetto. God bless you. Have a wonderful evening. And I pray that we make it through all of this together, because we are truly one people.